So we will start the afternoon session with a very distinguished panel. I will not present Winfried. You all know him. We worked together very close for a long time.
Yes.
How many years? 30?
Around 30.
Around 30 years.
Yep.
Okay, so you have the floor, Winfried.
Merci. Thank you, Louis, and good afternoon, delegates, observers, members of the press. I'm extremely pleased to moderate this session, and I say that for two reasons. First, we have a distinguished panel members who are accepted to join the invitation this afternoon, which I will introduce in more detail later. Secondly, I firmly believe that this subject is of fundamental importance for the future of racing. We as IFHA have, over the years, extremely diligently developed the international cooperation to promote horse racing and breeding, and especially the integrity and the prestige of it. We have made significant progress in many areas, such as medication policy, harmonization of race day rules, which I think was a long-term goal and a great achievement, the quality control of racing, grading, and last not least, the welfare of horses. We have also established that the lifeblood of racing is wagering. A steady income from wagering is an absolutely must to sustain our industry and to sustain the sport. And it is very important that we as a racing industry establish our IP rights and copyrights, because I think it is in light of significant investment we need into the integrity sport, into what we saw today in the race courses, and in technology, we need a growing income basis. Furthermore, I think we have as IFHA been extremely successful to really create our own IP right with the partnership we have, and especially Louis has forged with Longines, and with the Longines World's Best Racehorse Ranking and Longines World's Best Jockeys Award, it has given us internationally a long-wanted and desired visibility. I firmly believe we have made a lot of progress in this area, but if you look at the global wagering market, we should take stock and see where we are. If I look now as an outlook what the total betting volume 2004-2015 is, and you can see from the report of our international, if you could go to the total betting volume. If you look at the total betting volume 2004-2015, we see in a way that globally, we have seen that we have, in the IFHA annual report, that the total racing betting volume broke 100 million euro mark in 2015, which is a 6.7 increase to 2014, which is good. However, if you look at this diagram a little bit more carefully, you see that the global racing turnover still remains flat for over a decade. A snapshot to racing turnover 2016, we see in a way that some jurisdictions have significant growth. Australia with 8.4, Hong Kong with 10.7%, Japan with 5.0, and the US of 0.7. But we see that France and UK is down by 1.5 and 1.1%. To put this into perspective, I think it would be good to look at the global trends in gambling revenues, and especially if we see the comparison between the development in horse racing and the sports betting industry. We have seen in a way horse racing has experienced a bigger drop in revenue of 13.6% between 2012 and 2015, when the global gaming market dropped only by 7.6%. If you look then at the further trend, that sports betting is really competing head-on-head with us, and they have experienced a growth, especially in this period, of 6.2%. It shows the real threat of our market share of sports betting, which I think is important to take into consideration what our future strategies are. What alarming to see is that other forms of gambling are projected to grow faster in the outer years. So if one looks at the outlook to 2022, one can see that racing is projected to grow by 7%, while the sports betting market is projected to grow with 52%. 22% between the period from 2015 to 2022. Having then another look at the horse racing gross gambling yield, in relation to market share, we can see that we have lost approximately 1% of market share in 2012 and 2015, during which period lotteries have grown by 3%. But it shows that we have to think about strategies, how we can grow our revenues and how we can keep our market share. So how to increase our share in the global betting market? So the key challenge remains for us is, how can racing increase its share? In setting the scene for this afternoon's discussion, I would like to take you back to 2014, when we articulated the basis value creation for horse racing at the Asian Racing Conference in Hong Kong, which is shown as the next slide. I think we have to be very candid and see what kind of roles, responsibilities we have in the racing industry. We have a very strong governance role, which is the basic and the hygiene of the sport. Therefore, we take care of integrity, fair competition, animal welfare, medication-free or prohibited substance-free racing. And the value creation we create especially from the racing organizer and the wagering operator is based on the quality of the integrity of our sport. It's a must that we have, in a way, this, keep our house in order in this, because I think it is an absolute hygiene factor. If not, the customers will not appreciate the experience. Looking now at the value creation. The racing event organizer and the wagering operators are the two who really, from a customer interfacing point, create value. And if you look at the racing event organizer, first of all, he has to create an attractive value proposition for people to become owners, to invest in the sport. Because without owners, there is not a chance that our sport will grow. Second, organizing race meetings with attractive facilities to grow the racing interested customer base. We have seen this in a way, what our colleagues has presented, but I think it is in a way beside the facilities, it's a technology, it's a connectivity which a modern customer expects now to connect to any product. Thirdly, which I think is a key issue too when you look at statistics, which we will discuss later, to design a racing product offering in relation to fixtures, race programming, and especially field size, which maximizes the wagering potential. Number 4 is provide wagering products through channels and technologies which are tuned to respective customer groups with the right pricing strategy. I think it's worth highlighting that in fact, a full integration between a racing organizer and a wagering operator gives you, if you look from a data perspective, if you understand your customer, that this is the ideal combination. Unfortunately, this is only in very few jurisdictions, if one looks at Japan or Hong Kong or Singapore, where you have a completely integrated model, where you really can understand what the customer needs are, what in a way you can in a way provide as marketing, as facility, so to create a value proposition for the customer. But I think it is, even if you are not in such a position, I think it's absolutely important, even to maximize your value you can get from your IP rights or copyrights, that you have a very attractive wagering product. And when I analyzed worldwide, one of our biggest issues, especially if you have a totalizator operation, is field sizes. We in racing produce not enough attractive field sizes to really maximize our wagering proposition. And this is, I would say, one reason why, in a way, we don't see enough growth in relation to our wagering product. One issue where we could be very proud of is that racing has become a much more global sport. We see more jockeys traveling around the world. We see more horses going around the world. And besides promoting the sporting aspect, which is very important and key to create an experience, we have to make use of this new opportunity in relation to new wagering products, especially if one looks at pari-mutuel offerings. The pari-mutuel offerings generate a much higher return than fixed odds betting, and especially with internationalization, we have, I think, a unique opportunity as pari-mutuel operators. When one looks at what are the steps we have done in a way to maximize the revenues, there are two approaches: simulcast and commingling. as a first step, we had separate pools being offered on simulcast races in different countries. The arrangements were good to keep the regional interest, the national interest, but if you look at the business opportunities, the split, and if you look at wagering markets, it's similar like stock markets. A key fundamental issue is liquidity. And as soon as you have 4, 5, 6, 7 pools, you don't maximize the liquidity, which is necessary to attract especially customers who bet big. And it gives moreover, a hedge opportunity or an opportunity of arbitrage, which is especially now exploited by international bookmakers. When one goes back to 2007, we advocated a vision for commingling at the 31st Racing Conference in Dubai. The principle of commingling is that customers in different countries bet into an aggregated pool to maximize liquidity. The bet should be taxed in the country where the customer places the bet and not taxed again in the country where the bet then comes in and where the pool is commingling. And I firmly believe from our experience that commingling is medium-term, long-term a much better option than having separate pools. So what is now, in a way, we should, in a way, examine here at the International Horse Racing Federation, what we can do when we are moving from local to a much more global wagering market. And today, I think we are really glad to see the Japanese model and the Hong Kong model, where, in a way, you have different views, in a way, experiences we can share in relation to simulcasting and commingling, where you have an integrated model where the racing event organizer is the same like the wagering operator. And we can see from the PMU view, the international perspective, where, in a way, you have a separation between racing event organizer and the wagering operator. I'm really glad to welcome today the president chairman of the Japan Racing Association, Goto-san. And it's the first time that we have the chairman and CEO of the JRA make a presentation here in the International Horse Racing Federation. And I want to thank Goto-san especially for making this arrangement to come here. Thank you very much. If one looks at the success of the JRA, which is an interesting success, that the JRA has achieved a groundbreaking success in obtaining government's approval to amend the horse racing law to allow simulcasts on overseas selected races in the event that Japanese horses are in the field, and which began with the inaugural simulcast of the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe last October. Mr. Goto-san has to be commended of his vision and spirit in promoting horse racing as the most entertaining sport on this planet. Goto-san joined the JRA in 1975. He has held various JRA management positions, including chief representative of the JRA New York office, general manager of corporate strategies planning department, before he was appointed to the JRA board of directors in 2006. In 2011, Mr. Goto-san was appointed executive director and became president and CEO of the JRA in 2014. Goto-san has always a very global perspective on racing, and this is, I think, what we will see later, really refreshing in a way if you look at the importance of the JRA for global racing. Second panel member is from the PMU, the chairman and CEO, Mr. Xavier Hurstel, will give an account of the company's international business and the journey to growth from both export and import perspective, and the success factors in speeding up the company's transformation journey. Xavier was elected chairman and CEO of the PMU in October 2014. Before joining PMU in April 2008, he was deputy director of the budget department at the Ministry for Budget, and then an advisor to the Prime Minister's cabinet. He was elected member of the board and deputy CEO of the PMU 2009. From the Hong Kong Jockey Club, Mr. Richard Chung will give an update on the company's commingling development, a global wagering concept which the Hong Kong Jockey Club started promoting in 2007, but getting legislative approval is a painful process, as we all know, and we get only the approval to start commingling in 2013. Mr. Chung is Executive Director Customer Marketing, And Richard is responsible in our board for the wagering business in racing, football, lottery, with a total turnover exceeding 25 billion US or 20 billion euro. He's also responsible for the club's business development in China. Richard's presentation will cover the key success factors for commingling, its operational and marketing aspects, as well as the next steps in the development. Prior to joining the Hong Kong Jockey Club, Richard was a partner of McKinsey and as well as a principal in Cinven, a leading private equity firm in Europe. In both firms, he focused on customer, consumer, and gaming sector. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Goto-san for start of the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to be here. I thank the Chairman Louis and Winfried for giving me this opportunity to make a presentation today. I was also able to collect a memorable moment when I witnessed stunning race of Qatar Prix d'Arc de Triomphe in Chantilly yesterday. Last time I was in Paris, it was January 2016. We were in the process of system development to launch our first simulcast for betting on Prix d'Arc de Triomphe in last October. During my stay in Paris last year, I had a meeting with Monsieur Xavier Yuster of PMU to discuss about the contract for our inaugural simulcast. In fact, I had exactly the same meeting with Winfried in Hong Kong in December 2015. In order to start a discussion with each racing authority and operator regarding the international simulcast in Japan, proceedings took place for the amendment of the horse racing law in spring of 2015 during the regular diet session. Approval has been finally granted to JRA to operate simulcast on the overseas races. In the principle of parliamentary democracy, changing the law requires a national demand. That is to say, a public understanding. Then, what was the national demand while gambling in general is illegal in Japan, and the betting on the horse racing is justified by the horse racing law? In the general provision of the horse racing law, it is written that the purpose of this law is to contribute for the promotion and the improvement of breeding of horses and other livestock. Also, with the aim of improving local government finances. The Japan Racing Association law states its purposes as to regulate the organization and administration of Japan Racing Association established by the horse racing law for the mentioned purposes. In other words, JRA's missions are sound development of horse racing in Japan, contributing to the improvement of horses, contributing to the development of other livestock. The reason JR has been given a green light to undertake simulcast on the selected overseas races is because it was judged that it would meet those missions. More specifically, to increase public awareness of horse racing as sound and great international sports entertainment, to return the revenue from the simulcast to the breeding and the overall racing industry. From a legal perspective, every overseas race that JRA simulcast is taken as one of the JRA races and therefore treated accordingly. The distribution of turnover in general are 75% to the punters, 10% to the national treasury, and 15% to the management cost. 50% of year-end profit will go into the national treasury again. The horse racing law mandates government to spend the income from JRA in designated purposes, 75% to the development of agriculture and livestock, and 25% to the social welfare. So far, I have talked about the legal position of simulcast for betting in Japan. Next, I would like to show you our approach towards the achievement of the law amendment. In 1954, the horse racing law was amended to enact the Japan Racing Association law to establish the JRA. In 1958, first ever Japanese trained horse took on a challenge to overseas race. Thereafter, we have kept challenging on the overseas races. In 1998, Seeking the Pearl and Taik Chateau became the first Group 1 winner in France. At the dawn of 2000, we accelerated our challenge and repeated the expedition around the world with Japanese trained and bred horses. Every time Japanese horses would run in the Prix d'Arc de Triomphe, it is very common for the French in Longchamp Racecourse to meet a large group of Japanese racing fans. Those fanatical fans made a strong call for betting the Prix d'Arc de Triomphe, and their calls were getting stronger and stronger every year. In view of their strongly rooted calls and the purposes of horse racing laws, we continually lobbied the government with the support from Diet members group for the horse racing promotion and finally achieved the amendment. As a matter of fact, I have been summoned to MAF committee in both chambers during the Diet deliberations and would like to give some memorable deliberations. They asked me that even if it is convenient for customers, should ATM be removed from the racecourse and off-track betting facilities? I stated it is necessary service to meet racing fans' needs. They also asked me whether I would expect to generate enough revenue from the simulcast to embark the investment for the new system development and what my expectation of the turnover would be. I stated that we are estimating the turnover at $18 million per race, but still could gain a profit even if the turnover was only one half of it. There are just examples among many which you might be interested in. As previously explained, it is one of our missions to promote the horse racing and ensure the sound development. I'm sure that it is not only our mission, but also every racing authority all over the world. That is why we all need to work together for international harmonization. Since last fall, JR have been allowed the simulcast for betting on overseas selected races in the event of the Japanese horses in the field. As all of us stage celebrate racing and most of us operate a betting on the sport, the international harmonization of racing rules must be in view of racing fans first. It will encourage them to understand and access the sport. It is also essential to harmonize racing rules in terms of horse racing as a sport, which I believe is exactly the same principle as Olympic Games. In addition, we will require a higher level of integrity in horse racing as not only a sport but also a gambling. From this point of view, I acknowledge that IFHA has been tried to harmonize the interference rules on racing day drug control, and testing levels at laboratories. I commend the strong effort taken by the IFHA and believe that we need to continue this positive progress together. Today, I made my presentation on the development of JRA simulcast for betting on the overseas races. As mentioned repeatedly, JRA have put a promotion of the horse racing and the sound development as a first goal and pushed forward with this project. Also, having said that, I hope all of you understand that creating new business aspects or a quest for profit is not JRA's prime objective in undertaking the international simulcast. Aside from very successful product, the Triumph last year handled about 37 million US dollars. In fact, an average turnover of 7 simulcasting races in 2016 was about 12 million, while our estimation was 18 million per race. We feel that offering the best horse racing with the best horse and jockey to our racing fans will broaden the perspective to different style and culture of the thoroughbred racing around the world. We hope it will lead to enhancing the horse racing itself in Japan. That is our policy in keeping with the spirit that we must promote our horse racing as the most entertaining sport on this planet. I've been always emphasizing to the Japanese breeders, owners, trainers, jockeys, stable staffs, and the racing media that the biggest supporter for our industry is a racing fan. We always need to keep this in mind. Larger expansion of the racing fan will make the horse racing root deeper in our society. We must make every effort to achieve this. I know it is not easy for countries with different history, culture, tradition, people, language, philosophy, and so on to work towards the same goal. However, a product and a value generated from the thoroughbred racing should be of our common assets and shared to promote the global racing industry. The product means a horse racing, and the value means various information, including live footage. I think we should start to consider how those values can be best shared among us. On the premise of this consideration, we must challenge the true harmonization of the racing rules. There are countries whose horse racing is betting conducted without betting by their cultural backgrounds. There are many differences, including takeout rate, betting type, minimum betting amount, and even currency value. There may be also a variety of professional ethics. We should work to create a framework which will allow a usage of the horse racing's true values and open the door for any racing jurisdiction who share our common goal. Through our limited international simulcast, there are many new things and positives we encountered. We have rediscovered that horse racing is the same all over the world. But every horse racing in different jurisdictions creates a great essence in promoting our sports. And our common assets should be shared among the global racing industry. If a great value of our sports can be made in more accessible way, each of us can promote and facilitate the global horse racing to a maximum extent within the limit of the respective law. Thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you, Winfried, for your introduction. Thank you to President Goto for all he explained to us. I'll try to show us how PMU with France Gallo and Le Trot, the trotting racing authorities in France, try to stick to what Winfried described us, which is common pools, exporting races worldwide with our TOAD system is, I think, so the best way to improve return to our racing authorities. While this international level development, this international market, so globalization reached now also our sport, it's a pillar of our strategy. Our strategy is called PMU 2.1, and this strategy is backed by France Gallo, Le Trot, and like Winfried said, I think we have now common interests in developing common international policies. This strategy tries to focus on the good investments, to have new revenues for the racing authorities, also to accelerate the transformation of the business. And that's true that the globalization now transforms also our business because our clients are changing. Just to explain you, like Winfried said, that the transformation of the clients leads to the transformation of the company. We have now to innovate. We decided to launch now twice new products every year for the punters. We have now to have a more centric customer approach. Our clients want for new services. They want data, as you see this morning. They want new images. We have to use technology. We are lucky because horse betting, it's data, images, and transaction. So it's done for new technology. That's why we have to take this advantage to use more technologies to improve our business. And we have to try to get a new international business, to reach new clients, and this international growth in PMU is one of the main strategic aim. For all that, we have to transform our company to be more agile because this project must be launched much more quickly than before. A few data as before. So in PMU, we have 9.7 billion of total stakes. 90 of these stakes are on horse betting, because sports betting and poker, it's only on our website. And our financial results, so 796 million euro, is given to the both racing authorities in France, France Gallo and Le Trot. Out of that, approximately 12% of these stakes came from our international activity. Approximately 1 billion euro last year came from this international activity. It's a strong growth because it's plus 26% in comparison with 2015. And we have now, with France Gallo and Le Trot, 67 B2B partners worldwide. It's done in 48 countries because we may have many partners in the same country. It depends on the local regulations. It depends also on our commercial policy with exclusivity or not exclusivity in the distribution. And we have now three small subsidiaries, Belgium, Germany, and Brazil. In the international business, I think we did, and we all should import also races for punters. In France, we import 3,700 races from 23 countries, and it represents approximately 800 million of stakes. It's also a growing activity, plus 6%. So it's approximately 9% of the stakes of the French punters. So that it's an import and export business, and it's important to see that because you will see that this link between the two could improve the business. So, story of this business for those that who knows very well this business. The first country we linked with our common pools was Monaco. It was in 1987, and then especially Switzerland in 1991. The first foreign race that France Gallo decided to import for French punters was the Breeders' Cup in 1997. The first subsidiary we launched was in Belgium in 2013. And all these axes of the strategy are very important. Common pools, importing races, and also B2C export with subsidiaries. You see on this map our international activity. There is something very important to understand is that the mandate we have from France Gallo and Le Trot asks us to have a business that profits to the local racing authorities, so that when we have a deal with a country, with an operator, we pay fees to local racing authorities when we have local racing authorities. But it's important, it's our duty to develop the racing industry. That's why in most of these countries, it profits also to the local horse industry. So we export in common pool on the countries you see in red. With one exception is we opened the common pool with Russian races, but for the moment it's very complex for the Russian races to develop their own betting activity and marketing in Russia. That's why the business is quite weak. It's not a good comparison with the size of the map that you have in front of you. We have separate pools with countries in yellow, and we import foreign races from the countries with a small star. The importation of races depends also on France Gallo and Le Trot, because races that are imported in France can be offered to punters, to PMU, but also to all the other competitors in the market. You know that in France, it's an open market between a lot of websites. They have a legal license in France. They can offer horse betting, and they have the right to propose bets on every races imported in France by France Gallo and Le Trot. That's why there is no exclusivity for PMU in this import activity. What are the advantages we offer, and what are the advantages we should do and you should do, try to offer to develop this business? First of all, we have flat races, but also trotting races. Very specific market for flat races, specific market for trotting races. You have few countries with the two disciplines, France, but generally speaking, United States, Australia, a bit Sweden. But you can choose between the two activities. We offer the two activities. Second thing, which is very good for exporting, is the number of horses, the number of starters. We all need many starters to have the best turnover on our races. That's why we offer high number of horses per race, which is important for the customers. We try to be the best, or try to be at the best for exporting the images and to broadcast. We see that with France Gallo and Le Trot, because they own the images, and try to have the best images to send, with the capability of the foreign operators to give their own data and their own marketing on the French images. We try to launch betting products. That's true that if you are in common pool with a tote operator, you can offer specific bets like Quintet Plus with jackpots, and it's more difficult to do that when you have separate pools if your pool is too small. That's why we all try to launch new products, especially for exporting markets. We know very well what is the business in a traditional retail network. We know very well what is the business on an online website, so that we can offer data either for a retail network or for website. And we know that it's not exactly the same customer approach in these two way of betting. The size of the pool is very important. We have a very big pool. which is easy to sell. That's true that, for example, Winfried told you, Hong Kong, Australia, United States, South Africa have also very, very important pools. And the most big is the pool, the best is the way to bet for foreign correspondents. We try to have an active presence where in the areas with a lot of potential. We think Asia is one, you know all that, but we think also Africa is another one. So we try now to, in Africa, to come from a separate pool system to a common pool system. And as I told you, we have an economic model that serves the horse industry. We try to give fees to the local horse industry in every country we have business. All that, we share that in the cooperation with the other tote operators, who are members of the IPMA, the Association of European Tote Operators, and we try now to launch more common activities, more common lobbying with the other tote operators, especially in Asia and Africa. I think we could launch now common actions with our Asian, African, American partners, because we think that the tote system in the world is very good for horse industry and has to develop itself, because the tote system offers in big pools what the bookmakers won't be able to offer. Importing races, it's important for France, not only exporting but also importing, because you have foreign races that could enrich the French program with different schedules, for example in the morning or the evening. There is, and you know that, very good races to bet on in the world. And in this common business, we try to have a sort of mixed approach. So when we export races, we can have common deals with importing also races from the partner we deal with. We think there are a lot of potential markets for us, and I'm very happy to say to Winfried that we are very happy in PMU to offer the Hong Kong races to our customers. We think it's a very good thing, and we could try to have this common approach also with Korea. We think that Korea is a big market. For the moment, it's a closed market, but when this market will be open, I think we could have a win-win strategy with Korea. And the project to come is to try to have a hub to offer to foreign operators or foreign horse authorities to offer their bet on a common pool, and we could do just a technological and the media approach to help them if they don't have enough power to do that. That's why I wanted to share with you, but I really stick to Winfried orientations. Common pools are very important for you because common pools offers bets that bookmakers could not offer, and common pools continue to give much more return to the horse racing activities. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to be here to share with you and give you an update on the commingling situation in Hong Kong. So I'll talk about some background, as well as what we are doing today, and more importantly would be Section 5, which we would like to share a bit about how the world, the commingling world, should work together in future for further development, which is going to benefit everyone. As Winfried mentioned, the Hong Kong Jockey Club, we have been lobbying for commingling since probably 2008, and it really took us 5 years in the end to get the case approved with our government. And at that time, it is good that our government is willing and able to recognize the fact that horse racing is an international sport, and therefore it makes sense for us to continue to globalize our racing IP especially leveraging upon the high integrity and high quality of Hong Kong racing. And more importantly, it also helped us to combat bookmakers who might be doing arbitrage or playing or leveraging the Hong Kong product without giving anything back to racing. And finally, what it further reinforces Hong Kong's position that given that we do really have very deep pools on a per race basis, and that's going to be a big help as we move along the commingling journey. So after a few years of launching commingling, if we look back, what actually is our learning and what are the lessons that any region, if they want to do commingling well, that they should pay attention to? The first thing is still back to the fundamentals, which is how to continue to build a high-quality, world-class racing product. And that's all around having integrity, having an attractive racing program, and I think both Xavier and Winfried has mentioned about field sizes, which in Hong Kong we average about 12.5 plus, which we believe is a very good proposition. And of course, needless to say, is the high, strong control on racing control and high transparency. And the second factor would be continue to make sure that we have deep pools. And not only the pools, it's actually the variety of bet types, which would be attractive to global punters. And here, especially since most of the racing world is pari-mutuel players, and it is in a lot of the exotic bets, which I'll elaborate more, would really be differentiator that pari-mutuel players, operators like us can offer vis-a-vis the fixed odds bookies. And then the third thing that's very important would be the information, may it be video, may it be the racing data. But not only that, it is actually also very important to learn to have the ability to tailor the information for foreign punters. And I will share with you examples that if you look at the way Hong Kong racing fans look at the racing form would be entirely different from the way American fans or UK fans like to look at. And to this is also a lesson that we have learned in terms of how to tailor our product, in terms even in the very minute and detailed way of how information should display to make sure that they can enjoy racing the most. So where were we? We got the regulation approved in 2013 summer. And after 2 years of working, the first 2 years is really about setting up our technology, connecting to global partners. And by the end of the first 2 years, our turnover from commingling was about 2.6 billion. So call it like 2.5 plus euro, which only account for 3% of our turnover. After 2 more years, and these figures, this is the situation towards the end of our season. Earlier this year, we were already connecting with 34 B2B partners, over 10 jurisdictions, with a turnover of 6.5 billion Hong Kong, and that's 6% of our turnover. And looking at our current run rate at the beginning of the season, we feel that we'll likely exceed 10 billion turnover this year, and they will account for 10% of the overall racing turnover in Hong Kong. And commingling is also a key part of our net growth. You know, we do see growth in the local market. Of course, commingling is a key area where we are driving net growth. So how have, other than the technology connection, other than making our product available, what I would like to focus a bit more on is how did we actually market the Hong Kong races to overseas? And there are about 5 things that we did. First of all is we invest a lot in building an ecosystem of media partners in overseas. In Hong Kong, as you know, it's an 8 million per population. We have over the years, we have built very strong network with the newspaper, TV, social media. So we are doing okay, but we should not take that as given when we go abroad. And then, as you see, a lot of the customer information are getting via social media. So what did we do in terms of nourishing a program of working with key opinion leaders overseas? And then also there are areas about how we actually do more education on Hong Kong racing overseas, including TV program. And finally, point E, which is a bit of a unique situation for Hong Kong, is we also have a strategy to target overseas Chinese. So this is, maybe I've just shown you a map of our commingling partners, and this is actually a map of the rate of the country media, the different media partners across the world that we work with. And we take that connection. I mean, in my office, there were 2 maps. One map is about how many, commingling partners we have connected to, but equally important is what media investment, marketing investment we have made in this global map. And as mentioned, Hong Kong, if you go to Hong Kong, you look at our racing form, we do have lots of data, all in Chinese, which our fans enjoy. But when we move into US, we have to learn to how we can tailor and shape our information in the way US customers would like to see. It's on the daily racing form or drf.com. And let me tell you, a lot of the Hong Kong customers would not be able to read this and understand this style. But if it works in US, let it go. Likewise, in the UK, and we have been partnering with the Racing Post, and it has probably taken us many versions to get to where we are in terms of how we can market our races in the UK. Ireland, and also Australia. So just examples of how we are leveraging different media partners. And other than the traditional kind of racing-focused media, we have also, in each of the different regions, we have also identified different key opinion leaders, and we leverage on their Twitter or social media or Facebook accounts so that our fans overseas can, despite of the time difference, can still instantly get the news on Hong Kong. Because one of the problem is time difference. If you look at the Hong Kong races on a Sunday, well, we are 7 or 8 hours ahead of UK. So by the time UK wakes up, we are already maybe at race 4, race 5 in Hong Kong. So a lot will be, so just by relying on traditional media, a lot will miss out. So therefore we have to rely on social media, which is instant and 7 times 24. And then we also work with agencies overseas to try to create more education materials for our fans. And even for the English program that we use to broadcast in Hong Kong, we have tailored the content so that it is more interesting and more relevant, including use of terms for overseas customers. And this season, we have also created a new program called the Hong Kong Direct, which specifically are designed to target overseas racing fans. And then the 5th dimension is how do we connect to Chinese community? As you all know, there has been different waves of immigration that happened in Hong Kong or in southern China. So as a result, you do see Chinese community in many of the major cities in Hong Kong, in Melbourne, in London, even in Paris. So how can we get connected to them? Other than the mainstream English media, we actually work with TV stations and newspapers in Hong Kong who actually have their Chinese edition overseas. Likewise, this is an example where we do it in Canada, where this is actually broadcasted live in the Canadian TV channels targeting Chinese. So net, I'm not saying that what we have done is the best, but at least we feel that we have done some things correct in terms of tailoring our information, tailoring our marketing for overseas. Now, beyond the marketing, what do we think are the further developments? And here, I'm actually not referring to Hong Kong. I'm rather referring, I think there are 3 common things that the whole kind of worldwide partners of commingling partners should be thinking about. There are really 3 areas. One is about how can we further improve and establish the next generation of commingling protocols. 2 is to give pari-mutuel operator even more differentiation to fixed odds betting, give it more differentiation to sports betting. Exotic bets in horse racing is a differentiator. However, the commingling protocol today might not be fully catered for them. And finally, is how can we use the merge pool concept so that we'll be able to offer products which are attractive to overseas customer, but not necessarily attractive for local customers. How do we deal with that liquidity issue? So first of all, looking at technology, if you look at the commingling protocol today, you have, like many partners in the world, you have many jurisdictions, but many of them are actually using very different versions of ITSP. It is similar to many companies using different versions of Windows, but at least in Windows, Microsoft Windows, you have more backward compatibility. But in ITSP, I think the map is all over the place. And one of the fundamental issue with the ITSP protocol today is it is still based on collation, not bet by bet. So in other words, for example, in a lot of pool betting locally, the tickets, each of the bet come in as a unique, packet of data. So I take your bet, I accept it, and in case there's any communication problem, okay, we shut down the machine or what happened, but at least all the bet that has been sent will be saved and no problem. But in the commingling protocol, it is based on collation. So therefore, if even 2 minutes before the race, if there's any connection problem, in the end, there's any wrong with the file, there's a process, what we call a zero out. So basically all the bets are canceled. Plus, also in the current commingling protocol, all you see is the total investment in all the horses towards the end before the jump. But you actually don't know what happened to the bets, when do they come, who it's come from. And that's going to make operators' life difficult as commingling become big, because there will be guys out there who may be coming from computer wagering syndicates group, which some operators might not welcome. So therefore, there's a lot of technical issue, and also the current protocol does not really cater for exotic bets. So we believe this is really as more and more races become more global, more operators increasingly rely on commingling as a source of income. I've heard that it's more like 10% for PMU, it's getting to 10% for us. So as a result, how can the whole industry create a better protocol would be a question to explore. And then the next potential would be, how do we increase overseas customer participation in exotic bet types? We relaunched the Quartet about 3-4 years ago, and today each meeting our pool size is 10 to 12 million euro. And we also have all these exotic bet types made, called double trio, triple trio, all these kind of high, difficult to strike but high payout bet types, which actually is attractive to certain portion of the punters, and which also gives us more differentiation across fixed odds betting or even sports betting. However, in the commingling protocol, I'm not sure that all these will be supported. So this is another area of further profiting from commingling. And finally is, how can we develop bet types? And there are sometimes some bet types which are very popular overseas, but they are not popular in the home country. And let me give an example. One concrete example is forecast or exacta. So forecast in the UK, exacta in America, where the customer has to select the first 2 horses in the races in a permutation. So it is highly popular. But if you look at Hong Kong, our customers are accustomed to quinella, which is essentially a combination of the first 2. So not a combination. So it's a very different bet type. And however, as the Hong Kong product, we begin to offer more and more to the US and UK. How can I create the bet type exacta and forecast for them? Yes, I can create the bet type. However, the local liquidity will be low. So how do we solve the problem? And in the last few years, we have worked with Longitude before, and we are still exploring what to do. The next step would be the concept of merge pool. So essentially, with new technology, you can split your exacta bet and merge it into our tiers and trio pool. Then it solves the problem, because we have certain liquidity in Hong Kong for our tiers bet and our trio bet, and that can then be merged with the exacta bet of the overseas customer. And this way, I do not need to disrupt the behavior of my local customers. I can also offer something which is relevant and popular overseas, and meanwhile there's liquidity. So all in all, I think other than the pure marketing side of commingling, there's still a lot of technology work that the whole industry should think about in terms of commingling standards, in terms of exotic bets, and in terms of this idea of merge pool, which I think as a whole, the racing IP would continue to benefit as everyone go international. Thank you very much.
Before we open the questions to the floor, I want again congratulate Goto-san for the amazing achievement to convince the Japanese government to permit betting on overseas races in case that Japanese horses participate in the races. The largest pool in the world, by far, are the Japanese. If one looks at the Japan Cup, I think around 400 million US dollars, or a little bit more. So therefore, naturally, that would be likely one of the most attractive pools in the world. Goto-san, can you foresee, or is there a potential that in the future there could be a concept where Japan could commingling, where people could bet into this huge liquidity pools?
So I'd like to speak by Japanese to avoid some misunderstanding, okay? はい。まあ将来についてということだと、誰も将来のことは知りませんので、何とも言いようがありませんけれども、先ほど私がそこでスピーチ申し上げた通り、その現状で今私たちができることを精一杯やってるところであります。でやっとその短所についたところですから、この段階で具体的にコミングルというようなそのお尋ねをされてもですね、正直申し上げてお答えのしようがないというのが事実です。
Right. Well, we don't really know. We can't really foresee the future precisely. We just started simulcasting the overseas races, and at the moment we started doing whatever we can do with all our efforts. So, commingling. Well, yes, in future perhaps, but I can't really say anything at the moment.
Thank you, Goto. Xavier, you if you would quantify the turnover difference between commingled pools and separate pools, could you give any indication from your richness of experience how you would quantify this?
Well, I think that we have in separate pools perhaps 1/3 of that we have in common pools. And you have two ways to have separate pools. First of all, is to try to launch the activity. You try in separate pools. It's okay. It's good for customers. We improve all the data we send, and then the operators tries to go in common pool. You have another way to try to have separate pools, can be the tax level, because when we could like to go in common pools, but the tax level in the two countries is too different to match with the common return to punters, because you know that in a common pool you may have the same return to punters. If the tax level is too different between two countries, it's difficult. For example, in France, we try to have in common pools Breeders' Cup, and the toad system in the United States, but the tax level in France increased in foreign common pools. So now Breeders' Cup is not profitable for us. So we have to choose, either we offer it in common pools, but it's not profitable for us, but it's good for our punters, or not. So with these two reasons, we have, I think, 1/3 of the business in separate pools.
Richard, you talk about merged pool. This is probably an interesting concept. How you think, in a way, merged pools, really, if you describe the situation in Exacta, etc., why you think, in a way, that is a must, in a way, and what do you think is a potential growth with merged pool on a global basis, what one could achieve?
Yeah, I think it is necessary because in the end, back to fundamental, we all want to be customer-centric. And customer-centric means we offer something that the overseas customers are willing and are familiar with. So as much as I said the story of about how we create this exotic bet and try to introduce it to the customer, that's one side. But on the other hand, there's fundamental behavior of overseas customers like the UK customers, like the US customers, that they like Exacta. They just don't like the idea of Quinella. They want to go for a higher payout for the first 2 horses. So we think that is needed. And however, it actually conflicts with a lot of the local market where certain bet types are just not popular. So merge pool, this technology, which is now proven, can really bridge the gap of fulfilling what everybody needs, as well as creating liquidity. And I would think if we are to offer that in Hong Kong, because if you look, because for a lot of our commingling turnover right now, it is still win and place dominated. So I would imagine once we have that, Exacta, it will be another 20 to 25% growth from what we are.
Yep. Please, questions from the floor, Louis?
You mentioned in your speech the first Breeders' Cup, Xavier, which was 1997, the first betting, and I was pushing for it. 20 years later, I have in front of me the 3 of the biggest betting parimutuel organizer in the world, which are not commingling together. Mr. President Goto explained why. It's a legal approach with a lot of philosophy behind this development. But we are also still waiting at PMU and Hong Kong to commingle, because I didn't saw France. So when can we hope that the 3 of you will commingle before I retire, if possible?
I think Goto-san was very kind and saying it will take a little bit time. And I think probably if you look at legislators, I can completely understand. You can go to legislators not every year, and you have to prove what you first have suggested. It has to be successful. So from our experience, it takes you normally a 4-year pause before you can start even airing something which legislator would have to consider. Coming back to France and Hong Kong, we are definitely in discussions. For us, in a way, if one looks at, and Xavier highlighted certain issues regarding tax, because I think if it comes to certain pools, we have to see, in a way, there are certain tax issues. Then the other issue is that is protocols, because one has to, in a way, adjust the protocols. And we have in Hong Kong one little difficulty is that we have only a very limited number of so-called overseas races slot we permitted to bet on. We have increased it was once 15, we have increased it now to 10. But I think it is, then I think we have to see that we have to maximize opportunities where we link in a way this back to our international races, where horses run, etc. So I'm optimistic. We at the moment in very good discussions. But we implement at the moment, we build a new customer wagering information system, which is 400 million euro investment, and which is extremely complicated. It's not only horse racing, it's our sports betting. And we have to now implement and the new system, which will start the first migration of around, Richard is in charge of this, so he has not gray hair, but he will get it soon, which is a massive migration exercise. We want to complete this first, so that we then can focus on this. So we're optimistic 2018-19 that this is a realistic target.
I can just confirm what Winfried explained.
Paul, yeah.
Winfried's a very positive message, clearly, that the international business is growing in importance across the world, and hopefully it'll continue to grow hand in hand with ever continuing increase in international competition. And I wondered if there was any research that had been done on the impact of international competition on international betting handle. In other words, if you're in a country betting into a pool abroad, to what extent can you expect typically the handle to be inflated if you have a horse from that jurisdiction or more actually running in the race?
I think statistics is always, you have to have sufficient data to come to a conclusion. I think we are, at the moment, we can give you estimates, but I don't think in a way it is a sufficient database to come to a conclusion. But a key driver, it's not only, interesting enough, horses, it can become jockeys. Because we see, for example, when our jockeys goes overseas, the interest, the local interest, if there is any connection to a horse or jockey participating in a race, gives you a higher exposure. And therefore, I think Richard can trace, in a way, the active accounts, who then bet. And maybe Richard can give an estimate about what is his best guesstimate is without a complete data set.
Yeah, I think for a overseas race that we broadcast with Hong Kong horses or jockey versus one purely without, you are talking about a 20 to 25% uplift in the turnover.
And I think for especially what we see, and why I'm so even pushing our guys for commingled pools, when I, for example, see if a Hong Kong jockey or Hong Kong horse runs overseas, or an overseas horse runs in Hong Kong, if you look at the odds different in separate pools, it's significant. It is a perfect way of arbitrage, and we know there are significant organizations, for example, based in the Philippines, betting exchanges, who massively profit from these kind of arbitrage opportunities and siphon off money from legalized operators in these illegal markets. And that's why I think the commingled pool avoids these kind of odds differences, which I think then are used for arbitrage or respectively for illegal bookmakers in a way to offer very attractive conditions, especially in the country where a horse comes from, where the pool is absolutely biased. Any more questions from the floor? Yes, I think therefore I'm one of the few times I'm time, Louis would say. Yeah.
Sorry, for those who didn't hear me, I asked Winfried, how big a threat is sports betting to horse racing betting? Because if you go on to any bookmaker site, certainly over Ireland, Great Britain, there's hundreds of markets available on every sort of sport, as opposed to limited markets available on horse racing.
I think it is, if you look at the market trend we've shown, sports betting is definitely a significant growth product. And so the issue is we will not be able to stop it. It's a market which is there. We cannot turn back the clock. So what we have to do is how we can become more attractive and what is our value proposition, which is better in relation to sports betting. And if you look, for example, even you scan now the different bet types, etc. In Hong Kong, we are in a lucky position because we operate both football betting and horse racing betting. Around 70%, 65% of our sports betting turnover comes from our original customers. And it gives us, of course, the sports betting customer is normally younger. So it gives us a growth opportunity to cross-sell. Because we have an interest, and this is in the where Richard, in a way, optimizes our portfolio in cross-selling. And what is the value proposition of horse racing? It is much more engaging, it's much more a mind game. So how you, in a way, then try to create an experience for younger customers that they are attracted to this. You have a better risk return in relation to higher odds, especially if you look at pari-mutuel products. So we have horse racing have to think how we create an attractive customer proposition, value proposition. And use, in a way, when we have, when we control the betting side, how we can cross-sell. The problem what I see is that if you look at bookmakers, they have normally not an incentive to cross-sell. They look to what the customer wants. They look, in a way, what their cost is. And that is, I think, one of our challenges, where, in a way, we have to think how we can be competitive and be relevant in the end, we have shown that we can grow both markets. If you look from 2007, we were at a turnover at 60 billion in horse racing. We are now, this year, likely 120, 122. In football, we were 2007 at 60, of 45, 50. We will be this year 95. So you can grow. We are in a lucky position that we have one customer base where we can cross-sell. But if you're not, in a way, have this common customer base, then it's more a competition situation. And that's why I urge everybody to look at how one can, first of all, control the IP rights, and how racing can create a platform where you either in a form which you have here in France with the PMU and racing in a partnership, how you can create partnerships, and especially pool betting, pari-mutuel betting, offers a significantly higher return.
One last question, so you will be late, but that will be my responsibility. For President Goto, what are the news about the project of launching casino gambling in Japan?
おそらくまだこれから時間がかかる問題だというふうに思ってます。で、法律上はまだそのカジノを行うという、要するに、実施法はまだできてないんです。推進するという法律はできたけど、実施するという法律はこれから国会で細かい議論していくという過程ですので、私は少なくとも2020年の東京オリンピックが終わらないと日本でカジノができるようなことにはならないと思っています。それと、皆さんもご存知だと思いますけども、今月10月22日に日本では衆議院の選挙があるんですけども、その選挙の結果によってはさらにその法案の行方も混沌としてくるんではないのかなというふうに思ってますので、そんな早い時間に日本にカジノが導入されるとは思ってません。
Right. These things take time. And there's a law now in place of promoting casino activities in Japan. That's gone through the Diet. But we haven't got the law to actually operate, how to execute the casino operation. So I don't foresee the casino being in Japan before the 2020 Olympics time. And as a lot of you might be aware that this month, on the 22nd of October, there's a lower house election. And depending on the outcome of that, well, it'll be further sort of unforeseeable. So we don't really know what will happen. So in any case, you can't expect a casino to be coming to Japan very soon, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much. And if you could please give the panel members a hand. Thank you very much.